Look Down, Fair Moon by Walt Whitman. Look down, fair moon, and bathe this scene. Pour softly down night's nimbus floods on faces ghastly, swollen, purple. On the dead, on their backs, with arms tossed wide. Pour down your unstinted nimbus, sacred moon.
Look down, fair moon, and bathe this scene. Pour softly down night's nimbus floods on faces ghastly, swollen purple. On the dead, on their backs, with arms tossed wide. Pour down your unstinted nimbus, sacred
Good morning and welcome to our Sunday service. My name is Olas Carayannis and I'm the Field Ed student here at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. As always, I offer a heartfelt thank you to the team that puts together the Sunday services each week. The Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has been gathering for over a century to build community, deepen our relationship to ourselves and others, further justice, and learn to live with love in the world, all while we ask questions together about the nature of the world and our place in it as human beings. Here we affirm all people, no matter their age, sexual orientation, education, history, race, ethnicity, economic status, mental or physical health, gender, or body. Here we understand that we are one family connected to the earth and everything in existence. Here we understand that love has the power to heal and transform us all. Today we are joined by the Westminster UU Church all the way from East Greenwich, Rhode Island. So please extend a warm welcome, and Westminster UU Church, please join us for our digital coffee hour to make new friends and to enjoy light conversation after service. If this is your first time visiting, welcome. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can get connected to our weekly emails, check our website, or contact Anne, our congregational administrator, at usr.membership1@gmail.com. We would also love for you to fill out the Google form being dropped in the chat so that we can follow up with you. One last note, this service is about music born from war, and it touches on topics related to war with some quotes from literature and things related to war, which may be triggering for some. We do not revel in the violence of war, but these topics are mentioned, and you should take this into consideration as we move forward. Thank you for being with us this morning. And now, take a deep breath. We come together this morning with the beauty of music and the horror of war. In our centering sound, all can be heard. In this tone, both grief and love are held together in its vibrations. Destruction turns into creation, and creation into destruction. Listen and feel.
Please join us in the words for lighting the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community.
When Ron first told me that he was doing a service on music born out of war, I have to admit that I was trepidatious about what to say. War brings with it such terrible sorrow and suffering for the combatants and non-combatants alike. Often wars are fought for the wrong reasons, to subjugate this nation or that nation, to advance the aims of empire. Even the ancient wars, I mean, think of how many people died during the Roman civil wars because Julius Caesar refused to lose his seat in government. And throughout these wars, they were fueled by a society of artists who painted war as a valiant deed. Dulce et decorum est, as the ancient Roman thinker Horace would say. How sweet it is to die for one's country. How many died needlessly in the rotting trenches of World War I simply because they believed the lie that the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson told them? In his poem, The Light Brigade was mistakenly sent into a useless battle that cost them all their lives and did not advance the war one iota. And Tennyson rhymes in this, "There's not to reason why, there's but to do and die." I cannot imagine a less UU line of poetry. World War I was like a massive charge of the Light Brigade. 1 million dead on the Marne just to push the line a few feet forward, only to be pushed back the next month, backward and forward. The poetry that emerged from World War I was not heroic in the least. Indeed, I think of Wilfred Owen's clapback to the poetry that told him it was glorious to go to war in this amalgam of horrific images from the death of a man from gas. He says, "If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gurgling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori." Wilfred Owen wrote all of his poetry in about a year during World War I. He was then killed a week before the armistice in battle. What a poet the world lost. Wilfred Owen's poem to me is the essence of music born out of war. Not the pride Tennyson felt hearing about bravery, but the rude and unvarnished truth of those who emerged on the other side. It is not music that birthed the thirst for war, but music of how we come to understand, feel, breathe after war. Perhaps stories of glorious wars will always be part of human society. Some of our favorite fantasy books are about war. Think of the Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. We like war stories because war often involves that which is most valuable to people, things which people are willing to die for, to watch their cities burn for. It is about blood, and blood is ultimately about life. But these stories are not stories that are born out of war. These stories are born out of peaceful dreams and peaceful times. When the pandemic hit, the viewership of apocalypse movies fell drastically. Most people did not want to fantasize about the end of the world when events around them began to make them feel like it may be here. I imagine that the same is true of war stories in a time of real and present war. Though, let us not forget that we have been in a 20-year war with Afghanistan, but for most of us, that war is a peripheral memory more than a present danger. Perhaps the greatest modern novel born out of war is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, about his experience in the Vietnam War. His war stories in this book are disjointed and out of order, and often his descriptions of the war contradict each other. He says, "A true war story is never moral. It does not instruct nor encourage virtue, nor suggest models of proper human behavior, nor restrain people from doing the things people have always done. If a story seems moral, do not believe it. If at the end of a war story you feel uplifted, or if you feel that some small bit of rectitude has been salvaged from the larger waste, then you have been made the victim of a very old and terrible lie. There is no rectitude whatsoever. There is no virtue. As a first rule of thumb, therefore, you can tell a true war story by its absolute and uncompromising allegiance to obscenity and evil." The book is filled with him trying to describe what a true war story is and contradicting it. It seems that he finds it impossible to define what the true war story is, yet he tries over and over, getting closer and closer. He also says, and in the end, of course, a true war story is never about war. It's about sunlight. It's about the special way that dawn spreads out on a river when you know you must cross the river and march into the mountains and do things you are afraid to do. It's about love and memory. It's about sorrow. It's about sisters who never write back and people who never listen. Fundamentally, to use the generation of art as a validation of war is as wrong as using art to generate enthusiasm for war. But we can and should validate the art over and against the conditions which made its appearance possible. What is poetry born out of war? What is music born out of war? The German philosopher Nietzsche tells us that humans created art so that they did not perish from the truth. Perhaps this is most true when it is art born out of war. Or perhaps there is something more. Music often speaks to us in ways that words cannot. Let us listen.
We're about to play the first and third movements of Paul Hindemith's Sonata for Trumpet, which is truly one of the great pieces ever written for trumpet. Now, his early career, Hindemith had an ambivalent relationship both with the Western musical tradition and with the Nazi regime. He was known early in his career for being a wild modernist and a composer of licentious operas. In fact, Joseph Goebbels condemned Hindemith as being immoral and degraded. And I would have to say that from our perspective, if Goebbels condemned you as being immoral and degraded, then you are on the right side of history. On the other hand, by the 1930s, Hindemith had become interested in tonality, in the music of Bach, in the use of German folk songs, and that was something that the Nazis thought would reinforce their nationalist message. So truthfully, he was in and out of favor for much of the 1930s. But at the same time, he found that living in Germany at the time of the Nazis was incompatible with being a true artist. And so he left in 1939. His first stop was Switzerland. And while he was there, he wrote this sonata. And in it, you can hear the anguish of an artist who is grappling with forces larger than himself. The first movement, you will hear this ineluctable rhythmic drive that sounds very stark and modernist. And at the same time, you will hear strains of lyricism. It is certainly true that Hindemith had embraced tonality by this time. We're going to start in the key of B flat major and we're going to end in the key of B flat major. The third movement is Trauer music, funeral music, and you can hear the lonely fanfares of the trumpet in a funeral march. Again, we have this blend of lyricism and then really stark modernism. The end is remarkable. It is based on a chorale by Johann Sebastian Bach. The name of the chorale is Alle Menschen müssen sterben. And what I wasn't aware of until recently is that All Men Must Die was not the first Bach chorale that Hindemith had used in a piece called Trauer music. 3 years earlier, he wrote a Trauer music based on his feelings about the death of King George V of England. And this was a piece for viola and orchestra. But this particular funeral march and the chorale that ends it are absolutely searing and wrenching. And I want to point out to you the contrast, the irony between a simple Bach chorale melody played by the trumpet and this driving, merciless, pulsing piano rhythm underneath it. So I'm going to read you the translation of the chorale. Everybody must die. All flesh passes like grass. Whatever lives must perish if it is to become new elsewhere. This body must rot if it is elsewhere to recover and gain the greater glory which is prepared for those who are righteous. Now, Johann Sebastian Bach certainly believed this. But my question for you, did Paul Hindemith believe this in 1949?
Now we invite you to join us in singing hymn number 160, Far Too Long by Fear Divided. Ron will play through it once.
Far too long by fear divided, we have settled with the sword. Quarrels which should be decided by the reconciling word. Now the nations are united, though as yet in name alone, and the dissent all is cited, which the prophets both have shown. May at last we cease from wearing banners of hate remove, and earth's riches freely sharing, found the dynasty of love.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome. My name is Dawn Walter, and I'm the president of the Board of Trustees. And I'm bringing up my words. Part of laying the groundwork for the future of our congregation is making our weekly offering that helps to sustain the work of this community. This summer, we are resuming our Share the Plate program, and that means that 50% of our Sunday collection will be donated to an organization in need. Share the Plate means that every offering will not only help sustain our USR community, but will also provide support to our wider community. For July and August, we will assist the Center for Food Action. While many of us are returning to something approaching normalcy, the pandemic has left many New Jerseyans struggling to feed their families. The summer is always a slow time for donations for CFA, and this summer will be harder than usual. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
I hear an army charging upon the land, and the thunder of
Every week we come together to breathe in the silence. Silence can be hard to come by these days. Too often the silence is punctured by the unpredictability of our spaces, spread far and wide as we are. So today we offer a musical meditation. In this meditation, we encourage you to breathe in deeply, breathe out deeply. Feel the rhythm of grief and pain, life and breath, spirit and joy. Hear this music composed by Oliver Massiaen while he was held in a concentration camp. This is the last movement of a very long work. And this last movement speaks of a sense of peace in the end. So I encourage you all to listen and reflect. The special music today will be prefaced by the poem which inspired the music. The poem is The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot. The poem was written after World War I, but before T.S. Eliot's conversion to Anglicanism. In this poem, T.S. Eliot makes a number of allusions to Dante's Inferno, which is another poem born from a civil war, and also Joseph Conrad's writing, which was born out of the violent colonization of the African continent. The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot. Mr. Kurtz, he dead. A penny for the old guy. 1. We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass or rats' feet over broken glass in our dry cellar. Shape without form, shade without color, paralyzed force, gesture without motion. Those who have crossed with direct eyes to death's other kingdom, remember us, if at all, not as lost, violent souls, but only as the hollow men, the stuffed men. 2. Eyes I dare not meet in dreams, in death's dream kingdom. These do not appear. There the eyes are sunlight on a broken column. There is a tree swinging, and voices are in the winds singing, more distant and more solemn than a fading star. Let me be no nearer in death's dream kingdom. Let me also wear such deliberate disguises, rat's coat, crow skin, crossed staves, in a field behaving as the wind behaves, no nearer, not that final meeting in the twilight kingdom. 3. This is the dead land. This is cactus land. Here the stone images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand under the twinkle of a fading star. Is it like this in death's other kingdom, waking alone at the hour when we are trembling with tenderness, lips that would kiss, form prayers to broken stone? 4. The eyes are not here. There are no eyes here. In this valley of dying stars, in this hollow valley, this broken jaw of our lost kingdoms, in this last of meeting places, we grope together and avoid speech, gathered on this beach of the tumid river, sightless unless the eyes reappear as the perpetual star, multifoliate rose of death's twilight kingdom, the hope only of empty men. 5. Here we go around the prickly pear, prickly pear, prickly pear. Here we go around the prickly pear at 5 o'clock in the morning. Between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow, for thine is the kingdom. Between the conception and the creation, between the emotion and the response, falls the shadow. Life is very long. Between the desire and the spasm, between the potency and the existence, between the essence and the descent, falls the shadow, for thine is the kingdom. For thine is, life is, for thine is this is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
Now we invite you to join us in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song.
Please join us in the words for extinguishing the chalice. They can be found on your screen. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again.